Welcome to the Mad Love Your Life show. I'm Mary D, the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are just one day away from June. Can you believe it? It's all flying by so fast this year. But this month, what we're celebrating is diversity. And I want to know, what does diversity mean to you? To me, diversity means exposing myself to other ways of being, to celebrating others who bring flavor into my life. And this might mean people who look different than me, people who believe differently than me. And I'm okay with that. I love to see where people land with their values. And it's a beautiful way, just a beautiful way to be. I have some really colorful friends in my life, and I believe that my life is better because of them. My mind has been able to expand because I'm surrounded by people who can share different opinions, and yet we can still coexist in our friendships and our relationships. Earlier in May, I had the privilege of visiting a beautiful community. It's to the north of Milan, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, for lack, like, I'm not going to give it the right flavor for you if I say that it's, an old hippie commune, because it's so much more than that. It's really a beautiful spiritual community called Dom and Her. And there's about 600 people strong in their actual area where they live. And they also have communities in Japan and Colorado. They tend to their gardens. They live together. They've created an entire ecosystem that includes schools, art, community, energetic technologies, and they actually have their own spiritual values and beliefs. And getting to learn from them, to learn their words and their moves from their sacred dance, and being permitted to experience their temples, which are built into a mountain. They also had a sacred forest, and I also received some treatments there that are called selfic treatments, which are designed to realign the energy of the body, improve wellness. They have anti-aging effects. And if you know me, you know that even more so post breast cancer, with that healing, I am into biohacking and indulge in all the modalities that surround cellular health, regeneration, and healthy living. And I like to turn over every stone. And I like to think that I came back from Dom and Her looking a little younger too. And what was really fun for me on that trip was to see how connected they were with nature. They actually use a technology that reads the frequency of a plant and transmits it as a musical note. So we're in this beautiful sacred forest. It's pouring down rain, and our guide sticks a stake into the ground near the roots of this huge chestnut tree. And then she clips a leaf from one of its branches, and we sit and listen to this beautiful music that this plant is making. And it's in these moments that remind me how surrounded we are by other living things that are very much operating in their own ecosphere, while sharing ours that isn't always in my complete conscious awareness. And I often leave music on in my house for my dog and my plants, so I feel like I'm on the right track there, and want to be able to make even more conscious decisions around my just awareness of nature and the things that are happening around us. And speaking of conscious things, today my guest is the conscious mother. Her name's Drea Aguilar, and Drea is a pioneer in the intersection of conscious healing, authenticity, psychedelics, and embodied leadership. As an embodied leadership coach, a Reiki Master, and a psychedelic facilitator, she is dedicated to unearthing individuals' magic, confidently sharing authentic expression, and making a significant impact on the world for good. Her mission is deeply rooted in her own journey of self-discovery and healing, having lost her mother at the tender age of 2 and yearning for a maternal figure throughout her life. This longing led her to become the conscious mother she never had, not only for her own child, but also for others, embodying the role of a nurturer and a guide in her professional and personal life. Drea is the founder of Conscious Mother, and that's a platform where she offers various programs using transformation and plant medicine aimed at encouraging presence, creativity, and neural rewiring, as well as the senses of pleasure, feeling and awakening, the connection to nature with the aid of earth medicines. She also has a background in film and theater. She spent nearly a decade working in reality TV in Los Angeles, and that's a period that she would describe as the darkest part of her life. But this experience is now part of her artistry as she shares her story vulnerably and openly with her audience and with us today, to show us that if she can overcome challenges, you can too. So, Drea, it's good to see your face. I
Hi, Liz.
remember meeting you through a mutual friend years ago, and I feel like every time we get together, the conversation is always just full of depth and light. So, thank you for joining us. And really, I want to dive right in today and ask you, what do you wish you knew before you got into this work? Right. So, like, something now that you didn't know in the beginning. What was it?
I had it all along.
You had it all along.
Had it
Mm,
all along. The magic was with me the whole time.
mm,
And I don't think that I think it was all perfect timing of learning when it landed for me. And that was right before motherhood and then deciding that I was going to be that conscious mother I never had. And through my journeys and through my experiences, I come back to the same point of like, this was all in divine timing. And that
mm,
I chose this story so that I could tell the most epic, greatest love story ever. And then be able to teach that to others to live that great story, to honor our great story, that we as
yeah.
humans are artists, creators, and what do you choose to create and contribute to this world?
Mm. So juicy. So juicy. I lived in Los Angeles in my 20s. And I have to say that at the time, I believe Los Angeles taught me things about the world that I had no clue even existed. Yeah. And it definitely gave me the frame of like, I don't think I'd ever raised children here, but I loved being part of it in my 20s, of like just the fun and a little bit of debauchery and just all the exploring that happened. And I also I actually had a very brief um, history in film and media. It found me more than I found it, I think, just because of proximity. And that entertainment scene, that whole life, it's so different, and it's such a shift into the from the work that you're doing now. So, like, let's talk about that. How do you go from like what was your dark night of the soul there, and then how did you make that shift over to to this side of the world?
Oh goodness. So I grew up in Los Angeles and I actually found myself in Monterey, California, going to college. And just by happenstance, right, the synchronicity and the choosing of my life story is the founder of my film school. His name is Luis Valdez. And looking back at that time in my life, I didn't think I was spiritual, but he was teaching me spiritual things and
Mm.
about vibration and emotion with our bodies and with our voice and with how we express ourselves. He was the writer director of La Bamba. I don't know if you remember that
Oh,
movie or not.
yeah.
Yeah, but I grew up on that movie and I was so touched by it. And every time I watched it, I cried, wishing that Richie Valens wouldn't die. And then he ended up being my film school founder. And he got to name some of the school programs, and the athletic program was actually called Vibrancy, and he was so tapped in,
Mm.
well beyond the years of many people, and that was kind of the foundational work for me. And so I hid the fact that I wanted to work in the film industry as a child. I lied to my parents, said I wanted to be a nurse because I just wanted them off my back. And if I were to tell them I wanted to go and be an artist, they would laugh at me or shame me or
Sure.
make me. like it was a bad road. And so I
Mm,
spent most of my life lying. And then at 18, I
mm,
off and just went headfirst into art and film and creation. And so with that like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed attitude, it was 2008 when I moved back to LA, and we all know what happened in 2008. So we were basically like just scrounging and taking what we could, and that
mm.
landed in reality TV. And I did that for almost 9 years. And
Wow.
every day I hated it. There was
Mm,
something off. I got to do so many cool things and meet so many cool people. And it just was not living in my alignment, working 12 to
mm.
16-hour days. As a projector, if you know human design, we ain't meant to work that long. and,
No, we're
and
not.
what? $200 a day was where
Mm,
like I was starting out at like 125 a day for 12 hours a day. I made the most at 250 a day, working
mm,
overtime, no benefits. And the conditioning of this industry was basically saying, if I say no, I'm easily replaceable. So I had to be,
mm.
even if it was out of alignment in my body. And I
Yeah.
knew it was, but there was a stubbornness about me of like, I left my home and I didn't become a nurse, so
Right.
I got to finish this and I got to see this through. And
Right.
the more I was in it, I could see the trajectory of my life. There were women in their 40s who were executive producers and they were miserable. No
Mm-hmm.
family, kids, rocky relationships, never grounded, never at home. And I could live an exciting life and I could see how unhappy they were. And I
Mm.
knew that just wasn't it for me. I could not,
Yeah.
couldn't go through with it. And, in the last 3 years of my career in television, I was working at a cable network for art, producing shows about art. I didn't have to do that trash TV or highly produced TV anymore. I was doing
Yeah.
really cool. And it just, I was watching all these artists pursue their dreams and looking at them through a lens, quite literally, and saying, why
Yeah.
isn't that? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I found Burning Man in 2014, and that shifted everything for me. I
Wow.
realized I was being a yes to my yes. I wasn't being a yes to my
Mm.
life. I wasn't following my joy, and I certainly wasn't being present. So,
Yeah,
and
I
also,
don't know what it is about Burning Man, but I feel like anyone that goes, if they were having any issues saying yes to anything prior to that experience, there is something about the environment, there's something about the experience that just lets people say yes. It allows them to say yes. And I think that this is just the energetics of the universe at work because although my ex, he never went to Burning Man. Well, before he did his first plant medicine experience, I remember we pulled some cards and the card basically told him whatever shows up, just say yes. So that was his mantra for the whole weekend, was like, no matter what I'm faced with, the answer is just going to be yes. So of
mhm,
course, if any of you have ever sat through, a plant medicine ceremony, particularly with Mother Aya, that sometimes they serve you more than one drink
mhm,
or one serving. And so, and you obviously can opt out if it doesn't feel good. And it was just funny because of course, every time it's coming, he's like, yes. You get to a point where you're just like, I'm still saying yes. And like we had the best laugh about it afterwards. But I went, it's so true, right? Just the insights you get because you're deciding in advance, like, what am I committing to? And
yeah,
his commitment was to what the cards were telling him, which was to say yes. And he said, okay, they're called inspiration cards for a reason. So I'm going to just go with it. And I just was like, oh yeah. And it's same with Burning Man. I feel like so many people come out of that experience with saying more yeses just to life because you're in an environment where you're really free to say yes.
yeah,
You have so much available to you and
yeah.
things that I think aren't on in the regular playground of life. We don't
Mm.
walk down the street and there's not a human car wash. So that's, part.
Well, I mean, it's so inhospitable being at Burning Man, right? The weather is really not ideal. You have to pack everything with you, including water.
Right.
And so it's like a near death experience.
Yeah.
So you come out of it and you're like, okay, well, I see now. There's more to life
Yes.
than I thought there was. And
Yes.
it's, a big piece of what Burning Man did for me was people were so motivated in creating and being the best and always wanting to outdo
Mhm.
themselves the next year to the next year. And I
Mhm.
found that so inspirational because
Yeah.
it's just a microcosm of humanity, of our our divine intellect, of like being these inventors and creating from that space of like nothing and
Yes.
doing
Yes.
something, and
Yeah.
Burning Man is just that. It's this flat desert with nothing. It's arid and completely desolate. And then
Right.
for days, this thing just comes out of the desert, out of the dust, rises and becomes an organized city.
Yeah.
And then poof, it's gone again.
That's right. That's right. It's like a magic show, right? It's like it's not there and then it's there and wow, here it is again. I actually went my first time to pre-build first. So when I
Mm-hmm.
got to the playa, there was nothing there. Like there were just handfuls of people still setting up their camp, but there's no for those of you that aren't familiar with Burning Man, it's basically, if you think of a clock, it has its own grid, which helps you find where you are, right? So A2 and versus A10, so that you know kind of where you are on this grid. And so when you first get there, there are no street signs up yet and none of the camps. So you don't even have an idea really of like where the lines are or where the streets are. So you just sort of get in your vicinity and then you just start hollering out, hoping that your people are there somewhere. And we're going to talk more about that, but we're going to go to a quick break and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
All right, welcome back. So before the break, we were reminiscing about our burn days at Burning Man, and I was explaining the grid to everyone and how that it's becomes this beautiful art installation. Really, at the end of the day, it's part of it. It becomes a beautiful community, but a community that's full of art. Andrea, what you said is so spot on, which is like, wow, like people are basically upping their game. I remember that as I go around to each piece of art in the open desert, how incredible it is for me to think that like someone had to bring some of this art in on like a giant truck. Like it had to come in on an 18-wheeler, maybe two. And
Mm-hmm.
that is remarkable to me to just see the people who really put such commitment into building art and then coming and showcasing it at a place like Burning Man. And so much of the art is functional. Like you can actually like get on this art and like hang out on it and jump around or climb it. We were literally, my friends and I, the last time were on this big art installation that looked like an insect, and it was super fun. And oh, unbeknownst to me, when you get to the end of the insect at the tail, it becomes a slide. And so here we are sliding off the, and it was like a pleasant surprise because here I'm in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh, and there's a slide here. The slide was so fast that
Yeah.
I was like one of those kids that's literally coming down the slide. My
Yeah.
feet landed, but I didn't stick. So I did this like hop, hop, and then I just ate it. And it was the like most hilarious but fun. And like it brought me back to that place where I was like, I'm like a kid in a playground right now,
Yeah.
literally just
Yeah.
eating it off of a slide that was epic. And
Yeah.
like those, relationships and the fun of it and just the playfulness. And I think that that's one thing I have to say Burning Man certainly showed me is like it's such an opportunity to play more. And I
Mhm.
think that that's such a good lesson of life is like, how do we get out there and play more? How do we create more? How do we build more? Because you're right, there's a creator in all of us. And some people are like, oh, I don't create, I just follow rules or I just kind of follow the system. It's like, no, you don't. Someone taught you that. Someone
Mhm.
taught you how to follow all the rules. Someone taught you how to do all the tasks, how to check your list. And I'm not dogging any of that because everything has its place. And where can
Mhm.
we play more? Where can we create more? Whether it's art, music, spoken word, our writing in our journal, building a sandcastle, building a snowman, sewing. Like there's so many different ways that we can create and
Mhm.
indulge and enjoy. One of the things that we did the other night is I was at a dinner and one of the guys asked a great question. I want to ask you this question. The
Okay.
question was, what was your superpower as a kid that you didn't even know was a superpower that you can appreciate now because you're like, wow, that
Ooh.
thing was actually a superpower for me?
My superpower as a child, and continues to be this, is my ability to sense energy and feel people and read their minds.
Ooh, I love that.
And it's
When do you,
I can
when,
control.
okay, okay. And when do you think you realized that, like, oh, wow, like this is my innate gift and I'm seeing and recognizing that it's a superpower?
2017, when I had, one of
Mm.
many awakenings, but one of the major awakenings was realizing, like, oh, everything is energy, which I've understood. I watched What the Bleep Do We Know, which is kind of like the foundation
Mm.
physics in 2004 while I was in college. And so like there was so many nuggets of spiritual information that I was being
Mhm.
like seeded with that I didn't
Yeah,
quite understand, not know how to fit that puzzle piece in quite yet until now.
yeah,
And yeah, just recognizing like, oh my gosh, like what I used to feel was a burden because I didn't even know that I had this power. I was just feeling everyone's bullshit,
yeah.
and then taking it on as my own and
Mm.
thinking I'm responsible for it. So then I carried it. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I guess this is mine now. And
Mm.
and just realizing like actually I'm in a space of I can observe this, I feel you, I acknowledge you, and it's not mine.
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
And
Yeah, it's not mine.
it's
That's
like
such a good one.
I took the corner when that happened. And
Mhm,
now I teach
mhm.
others to use their empathy as the superpower. Like it was a gift given to you, and perhaps it
Mhm.
was formed and forged over lots of trauma and PTSD and
Yeah,
hypervigilance of having to be really aware of our surroundings as children.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I mean, we all are connected to it, right? We're all
yeah.
connected to our energy. It's just a matter of uncovering it and unearthing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I'm listening to you as you share that, and I know that there are people listening that are like, "Wait a minute. You mean I might take on other people's stuff?" Y'all, it happens all the time, and you may be recognizing this for yourself. It's something you may already be aware of, or you may just be coming into awareness around it now that you're hearing Drea tell her story. But basically, if you walk into a room full of people who are super ultra sad, and you suddenly, and let's say you were having a good day, you were on cloud nine, but you walk into that room and all of a sudden you suddenly go down into your deepest, darkest place, it's very likely that it's not because you necessarily were having your own deepest, darkest feelings, but it's because you walked into a room full of this energy that was sadness or great
Yeah.
grief or great mourning. And as that happens, we talk about the energy of things, and we talk about also think about intention, right? So this is just an awareness to give yourself, because so often we see this with children, and children grow up and we become adults, but we wonder like, oh, where does this feeling or this thing come from that doesn't really feel like it belongs to me? But it's
Mhm.
showing up, and it very well could be that maybe you have a parent or a parent figure who is constantly showing up in this particular way. Like for example, anger is not my go-to.
Mhm.
I'm a pretty calm person. It takes a lot to really wrinkle me. And so with that said, if I walk into a room and there's lots of angry people and that's showing up, and
Yeah.
I suddenly get that feeling when I have really no reason to feel that way, I'll go, "Oh, wow, it's happening." And that's my
Mhm.
cue to step out of the room and
Mm.
go ground for a while, go clean up. And
Mhm.
so this is a really great awareness. So for those of you that are hearing this for the first time, if this is not something you've ever even known as a thing, well, congratulations, it's a thing. And sometimes we carry things that aren't ours. And this is an opportunity for us to also clear that path. And sometimes that happens generationally. And this is, things that happened in the past. I've shared stories before about how, we have one of my nieces in the family who estranged herself from the family, but it didn't surprise me because my mother's sister did the same thing. So there's
Mm.
this generational pattern that also can show up. But there are beautiful ways to clear it, and there's beautiful ways to identify it. And there's beautiful ways to go deeper, which is partly what Drea does. She is a wonderful facilitator. And, Drea, I obviously found plant medicine, a while back. And I think that there are people who are really afraid of it. I think
Yeah.
there's also a generation that's like, are those drugs?
Yeah.
So, which is so funny because they're the first ones to immediately go to the doctor and pop any pharmaceutical that shows up, right in front of them. But
Mhm.
let's not talk about the plant medicines in the world.
Mhm.
And honestly, America's come a long way because obviously pot got legalized a while back, which I think has, opened a lot of doors, and it didn't become some crazy, terrible thing that people were really scared that it was going to be. And now, as more people have been doing studies, and as more work begins to be done in the world of psychedelics, we're also seeing all of that really, really open up. And I think it's beautiful because I will tell you all that, especially for people who have known me or have known me for a long time, that most people, consider me someone super grounded and super happy. And those things are true. And I'm a fan of plant medicine, right? I'm
Mhm.
not some like crazy drug addict. I don't have, I'm not off the rails, none of that. And so I really think it's important that people see that there are like really good examples of
Yeah.
people in the world who can, find ways to get deeper, go deeper inside. And this is one of them. And so when I think about people who, have maybe tried things like traditional, maybe even talk therapy, maybe they do some body work in the form of yoga or breath work, but they know that they want to go deeper. They know that plant medicine is like, it's in their eyesight, it's in their awareness. They just don't know where, how, what to expect. How would you explain like the energy or the healing behind plant medicine to these people? Someone
Mm.
new, a newbie, a
It's
newbie.
such a it's like oh, it's the medicine I specifically work with. I'm stuttering because people come out of it and they're like literally no words,
Mm,
and it's feeling a deep knowing, and I call it the ultimate if you know you know club. And
so
how
good.
I'll relate it to my own story. As you shared in the intro, I lost my mom, early parental loss at 2 years old. And at
Mm,
the same time, my dad was so overcome with the grief. He actually abandoned me for a couple months. And
mm,
so I didn't just lose my mom, I lost both my parents as a
mhm,
2-year-old who just immigrated to California from South Korea. And living with my aunt, I'm sure, as much as my aunt has always unconditionally loved me, I have had a deep core wound of abandonment. And
mm.
so what plant medicine does, earth medicines, if we want to, there's animals that also provide this.
Right.
And
Right.
if we look at it as a way to understand our consciousness by bringing more awareness in the parts of us that have been running the show unconsciously. And so my journey has been this recognition of all the ways in which that core abandonment wound shows up in my life through my choices, my relation,
Mm,
how I react and or respond to situations and environments. And
mm,
so with that awareness, it breeds choice. And from that choice, we can make different decisions
mhm.
and literally rewrite our whole life. And it's because it has this incredible ability to bring us back to this state of oneness. A state of being reborn is what a lot of people refer this to, is this rebirthing experience of seeing yourself in an expanded view, pulling all the way out so you can have this bird's eye view of like, oh, okay, I wasn't a burden my whole life. This was
Right.
happening for me because without this story that created Drea, I couldn't do or be the thing that I'm meant to do in this world. My dharma, my life purpose, is
Right.
to be this anchor and this guide for others to find themselves and find and like discover and unearth that truth about themselves so that they can live more authentically as I've learned how.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so good. That's really, really good. The part of it that really sinks in for me is the part about how, even before you were talking about how, like, these situations, and let's use abandonment as one of them, like, as that showed up, you probably had to figure out how to be independent, how to be hyper vigilant in a way at such a young age. And
Mhm.
and in the, grand scheme of it, yes, like, what a terrible thing for a 2-year-old to have to, like, figure out and go through, and suddenly that's implanted. And yet there's also the duality of, like, it's also shaped you into the human that you are today. And you also get to probably have a resilience factor that's actually a lot stronger than the average person, because you went through something harder so much earlier in life. And that's another piece of it that I think also makes a difference. I see, same way for me, almost a very similar path in terms of, being home alone a lot. I was a latchkey kid. I had to figure some things out for myself. And, like, thank God that something terrible didn't happen to me, because I was alone a lot as,
Yeah.
as a kid running around the neighborhood on my bicycle by myself. And I think that in that I go, wow, but I really learned how to be resourceful. I really
Yeah.
learned how to to figure things out. I didn't have an adult around to ask most of the time. So I had to go with my gut. I had to trust my intuition. I had to do all of those things. And it's funny, because I was like, I wouldn't want that for any of the kids that grow up around me that I have any influence over. But at the same time, as an adult, I go, wow, that really shaped me into someone who's super resilient. And I've had some stuff show up in my life where I'm so grateful that I'm able to exercise it and that I don't crumble at the
Yeah.
sign of a challenge. So I think there's also that piece of it. And it's finding, like, where do we find the positive parts of these lessons that show up for us? And how do we also decide on what is our story around this? Like,
Yeah.
what does that look like? How are we crafting that in our mind. I do have another question for you, but we're going to take another quick break, and when we come
Okay.
back, let's explore a little bit more.
Okay.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. We were deep diving on the break into what it means to hold space and like what a gift, like all of the things that Drea had to hold as a young girl, how it's really shaped her gift into being able to kind of hold all the things that are going on now for the world, for her clients, for the people that show up in her ecosphere. And like, let's talk about that, Drea, because I think that's so important. You know, the capacity, right? Having the capacity to hold what's happening. I used to never understand why someone could go to something like a concert. So let's say someone goes to see Justin Bieber and they like faint or they fall or they cry. When they see him come out on stage, I'm like, wow, their capacity to hold the energy of what's happening in the room and their presence there is very small because they're right, they're just falling away. And I just think that that's so fascinating, but there's some truth in it because it's true that their capacity is only so much to take on so much, and for them that's a big burst of energy. It's a big event, a big emotion showing up. So in the work that you do, I can only imagine that there's lots of big emotions. A lot of times people are showing up with something that they want to see healed, something, whether it's known or unknown, or there's a trauma. So there's so many different things happening. So, you know, what is it about, how do you hold that container?
It's interesting because as you're speaking, I'm thinking back of what I have experienced in the last 7 years of being a facilitator and a healer, and how it's remaining centered and always, you know, in Reiki, where a lot of my foundations of healing started, was the prayer of an intention that this is always working in the highest good. And so that's my prayer every day, especially when things get a little sticky and crunchy. Like, I know that this is meant for my highest good and the highest good of all. And with that, like that knowing, it has given me a lot of confidence and clarity that I'm not here to control anything. I'm here to hold space and allow whoever's in front of me, whether it's a single person or a room of 80 to 100 people, that whatever they're experiencing, I'm not in control of, and that I'm trusting that through divine intelligence, God, source, creator, whatever you assign it,
Yeah.
is working in the room, and I'm here as the conduit, as
Mm.
the anchor and the grounding space. And in order to be that anchor, I need to be very connected to my breath and to be very aware of my own body, because I'm the tuning fork, right? If
Mhm.
I'm to a room of a bunch of angry people, I'm not going to dim myself anymore to that energy. And
Mhm.
sometimes that yeah, walking out and coming back in, and maybe it's not ever coming back.
Right.
If I if I don't have the space for it, I don't have the space for it. And when I'm in a place of okay, I'm here as your facilitator. Where do we need to go for the deepest healing to happen? So it's my responsibility to create a safe set and setting where I'm here to ask really good questions. I'm here to help you feel safe. I'm here to be here with you. We're
Mhm.
together. I'm with
Mhm.
you. You're not alone in this. And I'm gonna cry. I mean, it's emotional. Right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm
Yeah.
here with you. Where do you need to
Yeah.
take this? Because I've
Right.
seen it all. There's nothing that's going to jar me or scare me. Nothing you're gonna say. Nothing you're gonna do that's gonna
Right.
disrupt this container.
Right.
And that comes with practice, a lot of
Mhm.
practice, understanding somatics as well as how to master your energy. Those are two different things.
Yes.
Soma is
Yes.
the body, physical. Energy or spirit is more of the invisible and how they work and harmonize with one another. They're very connected. And a big part of this journey for me in healing my own PTSD was
Mhm.
2019. I went to a program called Bridge and Bridge Extreme. And this is a embodiment leadership in-person workshop done over 5 days. And it's basically a group pressure cooker in which you learn how to train your nervous system whenever it's at the threshold of possibility, being aware of what your body does. How do you react or respond to a world that's happening around you, and what
Mhm.
choices you make? And so I have been devoted since 2019, volunteering my time to going back into these rooms and these workshops and becoming being a guardian, a support coach for this work. And it
Mhm.
has been amazing cross training for the work that I do in psychedelics as well as coaching, to hold space in a way where I'm always expanding my capacity, right?
Mhm.
To hold the fullness of my life. And my life is really full. I'm a single mom. I have
Yeah.
hundreds of adult babies that I take care of as my clients, and and while also keeping up with my own self-care,
Yeah.
and really learned to hold myself in any situation with calmness and ease. I'm not going to say that for every situation because there's some things.
Sure. Sure. There always are.
Like
Yeah.
a great place for this cross training is actually Burning Man, because again, like we're in such an inhospitable place. How do
Yeah.
you remain calm in extreme weather or extreme situations when it rains and then you're stuck there for a few days and you didn't expect it, you know? Um,
Mhm.
that all comes back to our breath. And when we can maintain our breath and like get out of our head and drop into the divine intelligence of what's 80% of our body, which is the
Right.
rest of it,
Right.
we can hold space in any situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if people hear, I think people hear it more today than they ever have, but the ability to find your own anchor,
Mm.
for people to be anchored so they're not just flying wild in the sky, is a gift. And that is the secret to curing things like major anxiety, and in doing all the mental gymnastics that might be going on. It's really a game of the nervous system. And I don't know that enough people realize that. Like people are like, oh, I'm not going to be someone who meditates. It's like, so don't be someone who meditates. Go and do a screaming meditation. That's an actual thing. And
Yeah.
people don't realize it. It's like whatever energy you need to get out that's
Mhm.
causing the discomfort and the jitters or whatever you want to call it, like go do, go smash a TV, whatever it takes. And then suddenly realize that that release, how good it feels in the body to just sink in and to let it, okay, that's what we're going for. We're going for the so that we can feel good and we can feel grounded. I used to joke because my friends would be like, Mary, if your house burned down right now, what would you do? I said, well, I get excited. It means I have to go house shopping and I have to go get new furniture. And they're like, how do you do that? And I'm like, that's, that was my superpower as a kid that I took into adulthood. It's just the ability to find that silver lining in everything. And I
Mhm.
really appreciate it. But I also realize it's coming from my nervous system. It's
Mhm.
because I haven't wrecked my nervous system. It's because I'm like, no, I can be calm on this. I can allow what's happening to happen and realize, like, how do I want to choose to respond to it? And I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest part, is just people not always feeling in control of how they're choosing to respond, or just
Mhm.
taking a beat, right? Just taking that beat to recognize what's showing up and then
Mhm.
making some decisions. And I, for sure, like you, have had my moments too where, that I'm not super proud of, where I have been ungrounded. And I also know what that feels like. And that's when I go, oh, this is not my normal. And that's what really makes me pause and go, how do I reset from this and bring
Mhm.
myself back into that space? And that's hard work. That's hard
Yeah.
work. For those of you that hear us talking about it, like, this is not like easy peasy, just walk into it. Like, this does take work and it takes time, especially when you have the dynamic of other people who are in your atmosphere that you're taking care of, and that are in your care to hold that space for, or that you may be, the guide that's taking them on that journey, whatever it is. So from one grounded person to another, thank you, because I know it's hard work, and it takes a lot. It's a special person that can do that work. I want to talk to you about, kind of some of the people that will poo-poo some of this work, because I think that's worth talking about. It's out there. I mean, I grew up in a really religious church, and like, they used to tell us that the chiropractor was the devil,
Mhm.
yoga was witchcraft,
Mhm.
and anything healing, energy, shamans, it's all black magic. And it was interesting because I was like, huh, is that true? Like, I didn't know,
Mhm.
right? I'm young,
Mhm.
and this is long before I know even what, like, shamans and kunanderas are. Like, I have no idea what these things even are. And it was interesting to get older, and as I explored the world and had new experiences, and I was like, yeah, my own experience of this and my own spirit tells me that, like, this is none of those things. So it's so fascinating to see that there's like a segment that's like completely like scared. And at the same time, there's some people that are like, I love yoga. I'd love to do it more, but it's against
Mhm.
our religion. And I'm like, really? Yoga's against your religion? Because, like, that can be a practice that you can just do. It doesn't have to, there's no like praying to Gandhi or anything that happens after that, for anyone that's unaware of that. So when people throw that kind of shade at you, how do you handle
Mm.
it? What's,
Mm.
what shows up for you?
What shows up for me is grace, which I've had to have most of my life because, I also grew up in a highly religious family. And I questioned everything, and it didn't sit right in my body. And it probably, these
Yeah.
practices don't sit right in their body. So
Yeah.
it's understanding that we all have different perspectives, and if you want to scoff at what I'm doing on over here, then that's okay. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, and connect this all back to what we're all here for, like wanting to connect to, which is the
Yeah.
higher source, which is God, creator.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that this is a little edgy to say, but I grew up thinking that, or believe in the belief that that God was only good. And so the
Mm.
more that I've been in this work, I've come to understand that God is everything.
Mm.
God is here to experience itself in all of the ways. And I almost think of it in like in more of like my brain works a little bit more like a computer, a quantum computer of infinite possibilities. And so it's God wanting to experience all infinite possibilities. And so it was like, okay, let me experience this. And what if that?
Mhm.
Or what does pain feel like? What is suffering like over there? And then what
Mhm.
happens if they came together and they had a baby and learned to heal itself? What would happen,
Mhm.
or didn't choose that path? And so
Mhm.
I just find it so fascinating and so beautiful that that we all have different truths and different perspectives. And so
Mhm.
I I grew up in a place where it was like, no, there's only one way. Don't ask
Right.
questions.
Right.
And so, you know, as as a product of a child that's a product of that, I'm like,
Yeah.
ask, tell me what makes you feel uncomfortable,
Right.
and can we
Right.
find where we meet in the middle, or where we can come
Mhm.
to understanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's such a good perspective. I also see how there's the other side of the spectrum where there's people who are like, well, God is going to judge or squash me, and that's people's perception or what they've learned. And so they carry those beliefs. And it's really interesting because I'm like, where did you get that from?
Mhm.
Because it was my observation from my own experiences of like, I was like, you know what? God's on my side. He's definitely on my side. And
Mhm.
I have free will to
Mhm.
make my own choices and experiencing whatever the consequence of those choices are. And
Mhm.
sometimes there's an upside and sometimes there's not. So
Yeah.
that's the fun of the playground, right? It's being the playground of life and being able to make my own decisions, and also knowing that when I make stupid decisions, so many of the times I'm getting so much grace, probably more than I even really fathom how much grace is showing up for me in so many
Yeah,
situations. Like, I
exactly.
feel like one day I'm gonna look back on the reel of my life and I'm gonna be like,
Yeah,
"Oh my gosh, I almost died again.
I
Oh my
know,
gosh,
right?
like,
I
that
was
almost
gonna say the
happened."
same
Like,
thing.
wow, yeah. Like, I just know it. I just know it,
Mhm.
and, like, it excites me because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, it's just one more way that I'm like, yeah, like, everything is just working in this beautiful, magical way that I couldn't always consciously comprehend, but maybe energetically and inside, you know? So my
Mm.
experience was that I didn't need to put God in any kind of box. And I didn't
Mm.
need to try to understand whether God was good or bad or otherwise. I just needed to be who I am and have my own relationship with spirit, and knowing, like, when a knowing comes in for me, like, just follow it. And
Mhm.
if I don't, then I'm knowing, like, there's going to be something I'm going to kick myself for later. So if I already know that, then why would I not listen? And so I think that's been the practice of life, is like, how do I listen to my spirit and know what's true for me, and knowing
Mhm.
that, like, there's great intentions behind everything that I want to put out in the world. And so
Yeah.
how can I sit with that and understand that maybe not everyone's going to receive it that way, but that's not on me. That's their
Yeah.
journey and that's their path to, like, work through, right? I think this happens in life where we may offend someone and not mean to. It's not like we did
Mhm.
it on purpose.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the other part too, is where sometimes people say things and they're just in an off moment, or they say something and it comes out wrong or it's misconstrued. I mean, that happens all the time too. But we only get these snippets sometimes of what people say, or we only see them through a lens that maybe we saw it through before, and that lens is really tiny. It's really not the whole picture. So we're missing everything around it to fill it in. And I just
Yeah.
think having, some more grace around those things as for as much grace that I feel like God's given me, I feel like I deserve to do the same for other people. Is just give them a lot of grace when they show up how they show up. And you're right, finding that middle ground is so helpful. My sister is a missionary, and so we have really fun conversations around all
Got
of
it.
these things.
Got
And
it.
I love her dearly, and she loves me too. So I
Mhm.
feel like we're an exception to, like, no one's walking away super angry. It's just like we just know we each have our own beliefs and our own relationship with our spirit, and
Mhm.
we go, okay, that's okay. Like, you're doing good things in the world. I'm doing good things in the world. So it is,
That's
so it
that's
is in our own
what
way.
matters. We're
Yeah.
all doing the world. we're we're doing the best at the consciousness level that we're at always.
Yes. Yes, we are. We're doing the that's a great way to put it. We're doing the best with the consciousness level that we're at. That is so super true. Well, with that, Drea, this is our show for today. Thank you for being my guest. For any of you that want to get in touch with Drea, all of her information is down in the show notes. Drea, your Instagram is Conscious Mother.
Conscious
Still,
dot.
yes. Conscious
Conscious.
dot mother. Thank you. Yes. And so you all know, find the right one, because people are always opening fake Instagram accounts.
So
As you,
many.
I've reported so many of those. I want you to know that
Don't
I usually
understand
check in with
why
you first, but I'm always
they
shocked.
love to pick on me.
They
It's
do. They
like
love to pop
you're
you.
the most impostered site on Instagram that I've ever experienced.
So weird.
And
Yeah.
I'm so trustworthy looking.
I know. It's crazy. Hey, they say that, this is a, what is it? Imitation is a compliment. So the fact that they're trying to imitate you, it's a compliment. It's a compliment. And with that, y'all, we are doing an extended version of the show today with Drea over on my YouTube channel, which is the Mad Love Your Life show. And so if you'll head over there, by tomorrow we'll have it posted, and it'll be a great show. We're going to extend our conversation that we're having here today, and it's going to be different content than what you just heard, and I'm really looking forward to it. Also, for those of you who are going through a transition in your relationships, if you're not sure how to move those forward, whether that is in trying to make some repair or in trying to uncouple consciously, then I have a retreat for you, and you can catch more on that at maryd.com. Looking forward to sharing more with you as the days unfold with that new project. And until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you. And may love always guide you on your path. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.maryd.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.